idea how old Elvis was, but like everything was great, and Elvis was really fine and really fun, and it was a cute little bird, and you get it out of the cage and let it sit on your finger and would ride on your shoulder, and then one morning we got up and Elvis was no more. So
So then, out of irony, did you flush Elvis down the toilet?
no, we couldn't fit him. So
Oh,
he
because that
was
would have made for a great ending joke of his
yeah,
life, you know.
yeah, he was too big for flushing.
Uh,
Yeah, but
so was Elvis.
He's Tony. I'm Mike. He's Scott. We're all three here to watch the world burn. Give you some love there, Scotty.
I was gonna say that's where we need the actual
Fingers,
guitar riff, like the Wild Stallions.
So, anyways, episode 20, Crossroads, 1986. Shit. Well, where do we want to start here with this one?
I was gonna say you got to start with the director. You got to start with Walter Hill.
Okay, we'll start with Walter Hill, who wrote, who directed The Warriors, 48 Hours, Another 48 Hours, Brewster's Millions, Last Man Standing.
You forgot Streets of Fire. But anyway, no, Walter Hill's he's a film legend. He's got a lot of movies that are really well renowned, and they always will be. I mean, he wasn't terribly prolific though.
No, he didn't have a whole lot of films. He had his heyday in the 80s, and then after that, it was downhill really quick.
Yeah.
So, the film was written by John Fusco. Scott, you want to chime in on this one?
I was gonna say I remember it actually won a screenplay award before the movie was made. Like it was some sort of award for screenwriters, and I know his original was vastly. I'm not gonna throw any spoilers yet because we're gonna get through the movie. I know there was a lot of differences. I know the ending was completely different.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so he wrote that I think several years before, because I know they did at least a year of production just for the music alone for this movie. So he had done it a few years earlier before it was picked up.
Yeah. The award was a Focus Award, films of college and university students.
Okay, yeah. I remember it was award, that was it.
Do you want to give some details, Scott, on like how the music was actually done and like who did what? And
oh my God, so there's a lot of discrepancies as far. So a lot of people, Ry Cooder is credited on the soundtrack. If you ask Arnell Roth, who was also had a major part of the music in the movie, he said Ry did more of like a consulting role, and then Arnell actually wrote and played. Either way, who cares? I know they both. I know they worked with Macchio for a few months, because whoever did this movie, as far as when the musical consultation, it had a lot of detail, like a lot of attention to detail. So all those blues parts, like I said, they worked for a year on just the music for the movie. And it's not like those are ultra incredibly difficult. They're just blues parts, but they wanted to get each note. It was very, very detail oriented. And I know that also Ralph Macchio, I'm not going to say he played a lot, but there are certain songs that I know the keys of that he's actually playing. He's on the right spots on the fretboard. Like that ending jam is an A. I know it's an A, and he's an A. And there's some people even thought he played some of the actual guitar parts, and then they sort of sped it up or slowed it down, which is why some of the times when he's playing in his room, the first half of the movie, it's kind of wonky looking. I can't verify if that's true, but it kind of makes sense. But yeah, I mean, there was a lot of detail in the soundtrack. They took a lot of obviously Robert Johnson stuff and Willie Brown and so forth. But there was a lot of attention to detail in this movie, down to the guitar he played, everything.
It makes sense because like Walter Hill is a very detail oriented kind of filmmaker, number one, and number two, with this being a movie set with blues and what Robert Johnson was the bluesman. Right. People are going to know the music, and they're going to know if it's wrong, because this was a musician's film.
Right, and that's why I was excited to sort of do this. And as we go along, I'll point out certain things that were ultra detailed that I still think are actually pretty interesting.
So in the cast, we have Ralph Macchio as Eugene Martone. Ralph Macchio in The Outsiders. The Karate Kid movies, of course. Most recently, he was Officer Haddox on The Deuce, which was a good show.
Awesome show.
Yeah.
He was also still the Karate Kid
Yep.
in Cobra Kai. You can't leave that one out. It's
I
all
wasn't.
over the place right now.
I wasn't.
God, Ralph Macchio, like, he had a huge heyday for a while there. He seemed like he was in everything for a bit.
It was a shorter than you thought, because by the time 90-something rolled around, he was gone. I mean, he didn't really start surfacing back again until about the 2000s, like guest spots on TV shows and things like that.
Yeah.
It wasn't until like the last 5 years really started his big comeback. Yeah. Moving on here, we have John Seneca as Willie Brown. He didn't have that long of a career either. His career started in the 70s with the takeoff of Pelham 123. And that was like in the early 70s. He didn't do anything really notable later till The Verdict, which was in the early 80s. And he is in The Blob. He is the doctor in The Blob. He called that one. He was in Malcolm X and Time to Kill. And he died like in 96 or something like that.
Well, and part of the reason he was cast for this is that he was also a blues singer in the New York club scene.
Yeah.
Oh,
and
that's correct.
That was part of the reason he got on this.
Yeah. And that also explains why he felt so authentic in the role.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But here's okay, talking about authenticity. Here's my issue with Willie Brown while you said the name, because I will forget to mention this later, is why did they use him? Yeah, Willie Brown is based on a real person named Willie Brown, but the actual Willie Brown is not a harmonica player. He's a guitar player. So if you're going to use a harmonica player, why not change his name to Willie Gray? I mean, if you're going to make the jump to use the guy's name, Willie Brown, a historical figure from this guy's past, why bother changing his instrument? He didn't even play it that much. He sang anyway. So what was the point? He sang most of that movie.
The only thing I could think was this, is that Willie Brown was, at least from what I read, was never a soloist. He did like a couple of solo albums, like only 3, but preferred to be a background.
He's a session guy, yeah.
Session guy, yeah. Last we have, I shouldn't say last, but as far as the main stars, Jamie Gertz as Frances, who's had a long career, but her heyday was also in the 80s. She first started taking off she was in Endless Love, she was in 16 Candles, Lost Boys, Less Than Zero, and some other stuff. But really, I can't think of anything notable after the 80s.
Neither can. Well, it's like Molly Ringwald. Like the Brat Pack, their careers all kind of dried up after the decade ended, and that's about par for the course.
Emilio Estevez had a good run in the 90s.
Okay.
Steve Vai as Jack Butler. Joe Morton as Scratch's assistant, who was also Miles Dyson in Terminator 2.
Yeah.
And then Robert Judd as Scratch, who had only one other film credit, and that was Fight for Your Life, a 1977 exploitation fight film.
Wow, really?
That's it.
That's sad, because his performance in this he goes by Scratch, but it's Legba, is how they refer to him several times in the film. But his performance was outstanding in this.
So let's turn to this plot.
The very first scene in the movie is them recording Robert Johnson's songs, and it is beautifully rendered. It is serious attention to detail. They got, how the funny thing about it is how mobile it was. They're not recording on tape. They're recording on a wax vinyl. Yeah, and on an actual record, they're pressing their master right there. So it's interesting to see that. It's also interesting to see, like, the entire time they're recording, the guy is clearing the vinyl that's being scraped off of the record. And I just think, like, that's a detail that, they could have got completely wrong, and only people that are really familiar with how the original records were recorded ever would have noticed that.
And another detail that I loved, and this is a great detail if you're a music nerd, and you guys probably already know this, is that Robert Johnson's voice, and they did this in the movie when they were recording it and playing it back, was high. But Robert Johnson did not have a high voice. He had a low voice. And so they had issues recording him because his songs were so long they weren't fitting. So they would stretch out the recording, and then when it would play back, they'd have to squeeze it together so his voice came across higher than what it would have. Now, nowadays it's digital. You can play the originals. You don't have to worry about space on a disc or in a record. But the old ones, his voice was higher because of that recording process, and they kept that detail in the movie. His voice was higher due to the time that they were showing and how they were recording that. And that was one of those little details I thought was super cool. Like no one would know that, but it's still, like you were saying, the attention to detail, and that's incredible.
Yeah, and this is, like I said, this is one of those areas that Walter Hill really excels at this. He doesn't put anything in front of the camera that he doesn't feel is absolutely necessary, but if it has to be there, he will spare nothing to get it in front of the camera. So anyway, our introduction to Robert Johnson. We have the recording session, and then we immediately jump forward. Or actually, no. Do we have the flashback scene?
We go back to Willie Brown at the Crossroads.
Yeah. Well, and weirdly, this scene is shot in black and white. The Robert Johnson stuff is shot in full color, and then this immediately jumps to black and white, and it's Willie Brown, and he's standing at the crossroads, and there's vehicles that are going by, making fun of him, calling him Four Eyes, and it turns out he is waiting for Legba to come. He wants to make the same deal that Robert Johnson made, and he wants to play the harmonica. He wants to be a blues man. He wants to be a famous blues man. And he winds up making the deal, essentially selling his soul for fame and fortune and notoriety. And from there, we cut immediately to Ralph Macchio getting his study on at the Juilliard. He's playing a 12-string, right? He's playing a classical guitar that's a 12-string.
I don't remember if it's a 12-string, but he's playing a nylon classical because he's playing that Rallo Ala or Turk or whatever that old symphonic song. Yeah, I think it's. I don't remember if it's 12-string or not, but it was nylon.
So, but I just remember the fretboard was substantially wider, and while he's performing for his teacher, at the very end of his song, he throws in a blues riff, which his teacher, who, by the way, Dr. Sidney Friedman from MASH, in case you were trying to figure out who that face was.
I wasn't.
You know,
I wasn't either.
That's harsh, man. That's harsh. Well, if you watch the movie and you're trying to figure out where the hell have I seen this guy before, he was the recurring psychiatrist that appeared on several episodes of MASH. He was the original Dr. Phil of his day. He could get shit done in 30 minutes, and that's the important thing. It's TV friendly. But he takes issue with Ralph Macchio not showing proper respect to Mozart, and he reminds Ralph Macchio that you can't serve two masters. You have to pick a discipline. Are you a classical guitarist or are you a blues man? Because you can't be both. And we find out, like through a brief tour of Ralph Macchio's room, that while he's at Juilliard and he's studying classical guitar, he is obsessed with the blues. He has books everywhere, and he is trying to track down a lost song. Robert Johnson supposedly recorded 30 songs. Only 29 of them were actually recorded. So there's a missing song, and that is our MacGuffin of the movie right there. That is what he is going after, and that's what kicks this whole plot into motion. He originally just tries to go to the hospital where he thinks Willie Brown is at. He's not sure if it's him. He wants to go and find out, ask him about Robert Johnson and the lost track. And by the way, his big plan is he's going to find this lost song, he's going to record it, and it's going to be his introduction to the blues scene. So it's not like some noble historical preservation motive that's driving him. It's legitimately, he thinks this is his shortcut to getting famous, and he's only 17 in this film, so it does come off as accurately teenagery that he's got it all figured out, man. He just knows how the world works, and he's good to go. The rest of the film serves to kick him in the ass over that exact thing. Robert Johnson, I'm sorry, not Robert
Willie
Johnson. Willie Brown does not take visitors, so he will not see Ralph Macchio. And so he notices a help wanted ad on one of the bulletin boards as he's leaving the hospital. So he applies for a maintenance job, and he's basically cleaning up after old people, mopping floors, and some banter starts between him and Willie Brown. It's not like, hey, I'm here and there's a lost song and I appreciate old stuff. And the old man goes,
Well, it does kind of start like that, because like he meets him once, and then like right away, Ralph's like, "You're Willie Brown. No, you're Willie Brown," and this and that, and he gets shot down at first. After a while, Willie Brown warms up to Eugene, and then at one point, Eugene breaks out his guitar and plays some blues licks and shit like that. And Willie starts to kind of warm up to him a little bit. Not yet. He's like, "You think you're a blues man? You ain't a blues man. You don't know shit about the fucking blues." But anyway, so we can kind of cut to the chase here. Willie's like, "Hey, if you want to know what this song is, you really want this song, break me out of here, and we'll go down to where is it they gotta go?"
They're going to Mississippi.
So the next day they show up, and Eugene gets them out of there. They hop in the cab, they head to the bus station, and they get on the bus and they head down to Memphis, because that's as far as Eugene could, as far as money he had to get him, and as far as they could go on that ticket. So they get to Memphis.
Before we go too deep into this, I do want to say this, and this is how it's presented in the film. It's not that they cook up a friendship. It's that Willie sees an opportunity to take advantage of Ralph Macchio, to use him to get the hell out of there, because he's supposed to be in there. He was in prison, and this is an old folks' home where prisoners who are now no longer able to take care of themselves are moved. It's essentially an old prisoners' home. Willie makes the claim that he has several hundreds of dollars that he has socked away, and that if Eugene can get him to Memphis, that he will pay for the rest of the trip. Turns out Willie's only got $40. So and a lot of newspaper clippings. So those coupons, that savings adds up. That's what I'm going to tell you right now. But so they decide that they're going to go hoboing. They're basically just going to be hitchhiking and walking across the state of Mississippi. And as you can imagine, Ralph Macchio is less than thrilled about this whole process. So Willie tries to, demonstrate to him that this is a learning process. This is what a blues man had to go through back in the 30s and the 40s. When you're a black man traveling the South playing music, you didn't get on the bus, and if you did, you had to sit in the back of it. He also gives him a ration of shit about his guitar, too. And I love this detail in the movie. Willie pulls that guitar out, and he says, "You probably bought this at a pawn shop, didn't you? You thought it looked beat up and used. And a bluesman's guitar, that wear comes from him playing it, not from him buying it already beat up." So you're the musician. You tell me, how often do you see shit like that?
You don't.
You don't?
No.
No?
No. I mean, you really don't. You see it in a movie like Crossroads.
Yeah. But he also said that Muddy Waters also went electric or something like that. I think that's what the statement was, and that's when they went to the pawn shop and got the Fender and the pig nose.
Yeah. Which that Fender is great that he uses the Telecaster in the second half of the movie too, because talking about attention to detail, that was like a 70s CBS with the black lettering. Those guitars are known for wear and tear, can take a beating, you can walk in the rain with it. So somebody knew enough for that detail for him to walk in the rain and walk down the road and the crossroad and all that. Somebody had even that detail. That guitar is known for that.
No. So, and anyway, they're hoboing, and as they're hoboing, they get caught in the rain and shit like that, and they go into a house, and that's where they run into Frances for the first time.
You know what? You can hate on Jamie Gertz's acting ability all you want, but damn, Jamie Gertz is a good-looking girl. There is no two ways about that. And
she is. And we say this all the time about Jessica Alba. Gorgeous girl, can't fucking act.
I think that Jamie Gertz carries her role really well in this film.
She doesn't add anything to the movie, like as far as her acting.
Well,
or her character, really. The only reason she's there is to break his heart so he can play the blues.
They're coming into the house, the abandoned house, as she's getting ready to go out. And this also illustrates Willie Brown's mindset too, because he's like, grab your stuff, let's go, let's follow her when she leaves the house. And he's like, why are we doing this? And he's like, because she's got a pair of legs, and that's going to get a lot more cars stopping than your thumb. So there's no wasted dialogue in this. Like everything, there's a point to everything that's said in here. And that's like one of those little things that I thought as a character development, it's really well handled. And it also like lets you know that, yeah, if he'll do this to Jamie Gertz, who's a 17-year-old runaway, why the hell do you think he would feel bad about doing this to Eugene? So
yeah. So then they get you ride and stuff like that, and they end up at this bar and like motel thing. You got the bar across the street, and then right across the street, or actually the other side of the parking lot is a motel.
Yeah.
So Jamie Gertz goes into the bar and then comes out with an older dude, and she goes into the room, and Ralph Macchio's like, what the fuck's going on? And like, Willie Brown's like, what the fuck think's going on there?
And Willie Brown's response is, that girl looked like she knew what she was doing and she'd done it before. So I'm just saying, it's a load of colorful characters in this. Ralph Macchio White Knights the fuck out and goes to save his lady love, who like initially they can't stand each other, so why he would bother, I don't know, but apparently they decided
he did it all for the glory of love.
Anyway, Ralph Macchio comes in to save the day, and turns out, no, she is not there to prostitute. She is there to basically thump this dude over the head and rip his ass off, because you know what? It's really difficult to say you got robbed when you're soliciting an underage prostitute. So you just eat the loss on that one. You don't get the cops involved. Yeah. But Ralph Macchio, in the ultimate, like, I have no idea what I'm doing move, he doesn't, like, hit the guy over the back of the head. No, he jumps on his back and tries to go for, like, some stupid sleeper hold, like, fucking Von Erich would do. I don't know why he was thinking that. I don't know why he didn't hit him with something. But Jamie Gertz has to rescue Ralph Macchio by saying, well, you know what? I'm only 15. I wonder how the cops would feel about knowing that you solicited a statutory, rape case.
Well, actually, Willie saves them because Willie comes in with the gun.
Oh, you're right. Yeah. My bad. So Willie gets shit done. That's what it all boils down to. Willie gets shit done. Really,
and they take his money. They take his fucking cars. Like, you'll find it at some Mississippi fucking like airport parking lot or some shit like that. Well, be there in 4 days, what he tells them. So anyway, so they take off and they end up selling the car at a junkyard. And then like immediately, so he ain't getting his car back. And then they end up at a barn where they stay the night. And that's where Ralph Macchio pops his cherry. Yeah. Well done, Ralph, or Eugene. And so the next morning, the cops bust into the barn, and instead of arresting them, they take him to the county line. And at first,
wait! They do take all of Jamie Gertz's money.
Yes.
Which is kind of funny that she throws a fit over it, considering that she just stole that from somebody else. so I mean,
she gets a little lippy, and damn near gets them fucking arrested. But Willie Brown steps in again, the wise old man, and like calms her down. Like we'll get the walking.
Yeah. Well, there's a bit in there. Willie has an exchange with the sheriff. And he says, things changed around here. Back in my day, they'd take you out to a field, and no one would ever see you again. And the sheriff is African American, as well as his deputy is African American. But when they steal the money from Jamie Gertz, Willie makes the comment that some things have changed around here, some things are still the same.
Yeah.
And there's kind of a look of shock on the sheriff's face at that particular statement. I don't know if it's intended to be a character moment, kind of an epiphany, but I took it that way. they wind up going to town, and there's like legitimately it's a segregated town. Like the left side of the street is where the African American folks go, and the right side of the street is where the white folks go. And they decide that they're going to do their business on the racially appropriate side of town. And as you can imagine, Jamie Gertz is going in to rip people off. And I love this scene in the movie because Ralph Macchio goes in, he walks up to the bar, and he asks for a drink, and he doesn't have any money, and he's like, "Oh, how about I play some songs for a drink?" And the bartender's like, "Just take the drink and get the hell out of my face."
Yeah.
So, he has no interest in a 17-year-old white kid that wants to play the blues. So,
Yeah, that's the other thing too. They walk in there, it is straight up country bar.
yeah, and it's Stuckey's from Urban Cowboy on a smaller scale.
It is Salem, Missouri. Exactly.
And then Willie is over on his side of the street, and he's listening to a legit blues band, and they're getting their swerve on, and Willie is sitting, he's talking to ladies up at the bar.
Yeah.
And apparently no one believes that it's Blind Dog. What is his moniker as a blues man? It's
Blind Dog, Willie Brown, something else. I don't.
Yeah,
it doesn't matter.
Anyway, like.
But yeah, nope. The girl he's chatting up does not believe him. I was like, whatever, old man.
Yeah. She just thinks he's talking shit to try and score.
Mm-hmm.
Back at
Back at Stuckey's.
Back at Mayonnaise Mart. So, Jamie Gertz is busy trying to steal a wallet, and so some guy accuses, "Hey, where's my wallet? You stole my wallet." And naturally, White Knight Ralph Macchio runs over, and he's like, "Hey, she didn't steal your wallet," which she did. Mm-hmm. And then she's all like, "Why don't you show him your gun, Eugene?" It's like, okay, there's an old saying about where you place your genitals and crazy, and Eugene crossed the line. Any woman that is willing to get you in a shootout over some dude's wallet she just stole ain't worth the trouble, gentlemen. So, I'm just saying. So anyway, it ends with the bartender putting some holes in his roof to calm the masses down, and he winds up losing the gun at the bar, right? He winds up giving his gun to the bartender.
Yeah.
And so they can skate the hell out of there. And as you can imagine, Willie was thrilled about this news. And so they decide they're going to go find Willie. They go over to the African American side of town, and they go into the bar, and all eyes are on them, like, you're in the wrong place. Willie smooths it over by saying, he's here to play a song, and they get up on stage and they, rock out. They play some serious blues. The band all gets into it, and at this point, they sound good. Tell us any insight into this particular performance, Scott?
Just that nobody cared until he got up there. It's kind of like if you're at a bar and someone comes in, they're doing their thing, you're like, okay, cool. Until somebody has some sort of what's the word I'm looking for? Some sort of
I wish I could help.
I don't know. Willie's like the hype man at first. He gets the hyped up. Yeah, here he is, the Lightning Kid coming on. Fucking build him up, getting all pumped up, and
when Willie is introducing Lightning Boy to come up on stage, he's introducing him in the same way that he's been giving Eugene shit for the whole movie. You don't know nothing about the blues because you're from New York and you live in the suburbs and, Chicago. He's like giving him all crap. And then the funny thing about it is when he's introducing him to get up on stage, he's saying all those things, but he's selling it as a positive.
Right.
Like, here's this guy, he's from out of town, he's all the way from this, he's come down here to play for you guys, and that gets the crowd all fired up, and then suddenly
he was protecting him, basically. Yeah. He was protecting him, because if one, they still wouldn't have cared. And I mean, it's one of those, he could be jamming, and then Willie goes back to his harmonica, and they're all going to be back into it again.
Yeah.
You know, you
So-
can like 4/5 of the band.
But no, I was just curious because you've played at a lot of places, and I just wanted to know, like, is that like, oh, they're from out of town phenomenon? How
I think
how much does
especially
that
with
play
the
into?
blues, for sure. Definitely with the blues. There's Memphis blues. There's all of that. So yeah, the city itself, I think, does matter when it comes to that style of music.
Okay.
There's New York blues, which is more like lounge, cigar. You think jazzy, like jazzy. So yeah, there's a for sure with this style. Yeah.
All right. Well, that's why you're here, man. That's why you're here. Anyway, Eugene feels like he put on like a hell of a show, so he's very full of himself after this performance, and he goes back to the motel with Jamie Lee or Jamie Gertz, not Jamie Lee, and he's like, oh yeah, I'm gonna record the song, the lost song from Robert Fulton. He's got to show it to me now. I proved to him I'm a blues man. And Willie comes in and he's like, they weren't feeling you, they were feeling whiskey, just like I want to be doing. You don't know shit. You are shit. If they weren't drunk, you sucked. So it's a very humbling conversation, and as you can imagine, it sets Eugene off in a very, I don't know, it's very believable. It's exactly like, a young guy who gets his first taste of success and all of a sudden he thinks he knows everything. And the guy that's like been around the block several times is like, you really don't know shit. You just got your first taste. This is not the whole meal.
I was going to say, I feel like he would have had that conversation with him. I feel like that was like part of his training, so to speak.
Yeah.
Like they could have been in a coffee house and they not been drunk, and he was still going to rip him down and come up with a reason. That was all part of his ongoing thing, I think.
How similar plot wise? I mean, like literally, if you take like the lost song element and Willie's story out of this movie, like Ralph Macchio's arc is exactly the same as the Karate Kid.
Right.
Because
I want to learn real blues, Mom, not the YMCA. I want to learn real blues.
Yeah, exactly. Because he's like, oh, I know karate. I went to the Y and learned this, and then he gets his ass kicked on the beach.
Right.
While he's white knighting Elizabeth Shue over a stupid radio.
And then that jam that he just did, he got called out for, was like the equivalent of the scene when he's in the shower at Halloween at school.
Yeah.
And he it's the same thing. And he gets his ass kicked after that. So same thing.
So, anyway, Jamie Lee Gertz decides it is time for her to get the hell out of Dodge. She has spent entirely too much time with Eugene and Willie, and she is off to LA because she's going to be a dancer. Look, if there's a pole involved, you're an entertainer. You're not a dancer. I feel like Francis is a wasted character. There's something there, and they could have gotten a lot more out of it than they did. But I don't think when they were writing the script, they were like, "Oh, this is all about Eugene and Willie. We don't need to worry about her. We can just pencil her in." She comes off as kind of a MacGuffin. She's there in service to the other characters. She doesn't have any agency as a character herself. And I think that if there's one thing that I would change about this film, I would flesh her character out a bit more, other than giving her the I'm a runaway and I rip people off and I ran away from. It's even back in the 80s, this was cliche. There's no new ground here. And they could have done something with it. She deserved to be a more interesting character, I think, especially because I think it would have made Eugene and her's bond a little bit more honest. So why Eugene would be heartbroken about a chick that, gets him in bar fights or, tries to talk him into, jumping a dude in a hotel room, I have no idea. That must have been some crazy awesome sex because everything else about her sucks.
Too. Well, at least I'm going to take it as the first time he got laid.
Yes.
I think you're right. I think that's the.
I almost think it was implied.
Yeah, exactly. Because otherwise, like you said, why would he give a fucking shit? The girl off for what 2-3 days tops, and like you said, she was a shitty fucking person. So if it wasn't for the fact that he popped his cherry, I mean, why would you care?
Yeah, well, it's not the years, it's the mileage. It's all the walking they were doing. So,
I mean,
but
think about it. The guy was like a school band Juilliard musician. He probably wasn't exactly having a flock of girls around him at this age anyway, you know? So he grabbed this one that came along, saw him for what he was, and latched on. She's like, hey, just like Willie did, I can
Yeah.
use this guy too for a little bit. He's
Yep.
all puppy love and, you know,
Yeah.
has an
Oh
idea
yeah.
about what this is already. Yeah.
Hmm. Oh yeah, totally.
so anyway, Ralph Macchio wakes up. Eugene wakes up. He finds out she's gone. He's heartbroken. Willie pours him a glass of whiskey and he says, "You know what? This is the blues right here. The blues is a good man feeling bad." And so he starts drinking, and for the first time, it's not a technical performance. It is Eugene playing what he's feeling. And that I'm not a musician. I know like next to nothing about, I know enough to be dangerous, but I can tell you that there's some real heart in this scene. This scene stands out as compared to all the other performances in it, in that, he's not trying to impress anybody. So is it just me, or how did that come off for
No,
you?
because musically you can feel it. And there's an old saying that like it's not how fast or how you play, it's the note choices. It's the notes that you play. My uncle used to, like, as a joke, do these things that he could play a one note guitar solo and make you feel something just using one fret and how you maneuver it. That's the blues. That's how you slide. It's the maneuvering of that. That's the emotion. So yeah, absolutely. It didn't, he was sitting there, it was raw. He wasn't shredding, he wasn't Juilliard, he wasn't being impressive. He was just straight out playing what was coming through him. That's a thing. I mean, that's what the whole music's based on, right? I mean,
Yeah. Anyway, with the revelation that Eugene has finally actually learned what the blues is about, Eugene then drops the bomb that Robert Johnson recorded 29 songs, and that's all he had to give the world. There is no lost song.
Willie
There
dropped the bomb.
is, yeah, there is no 30th song, and Robert would tell you, do it for yourself.
Yeah.
And so I love that. I love everything about it. It is a perfect conclusion to this quest for this lost song. That's
It's funny about it, Les, is like Ralph Macchio wasn't all that upset about it either.
no. It
It's
was
like, oh well, fuck it.
I'm sitting here laughing because I'm thinking maybe the 30th song was the journey and friends you met along the way.
absolutely. so, but so we have that, and then Willie goes to, it was a brothel. When he was a young man, it was the brothel, and he knew people that lived there. And he goes to this house. He's trying to locate this lady who can tell him where the Crossroads were, and um, she's not there, but her granddaughter is still running the place, and it's now a boarding house. And he asks, do you know where these Crossroads are? And she gets one of the men that works for her to take them to where the Crossroads exist. And he calls up the devil's secretary.
PA, personal assistant.
Yeah. Executive assistant, please. And and they show up, and he basically is like, look, you know what? I didn't get the deal that I signed on for. I don't know exactly what that means, but uh, basically, Willie's told, look, we already have your soul. There's no renegotiating on this one. We filled our end of the deal, so you're going to fill your end of the deal. And Ralph Macchio's like, well, what about my soul? I don't believe any of this shit. So you know what? If so they come to the agreement that they're going to be doing something called cutting heads, which is where you have two guitarists square off in mortal combat with fatalities and ice and like throwing bladed razor hats and the whole 9 yards. Ralph Macchio doesn't buy into it, but then he says, Jack Butler cuts heads on Saturday night, and he's like, all right, fine, where do we go? We'll be there. And then time immediately skips forward, and they're at the place where the cutting heads takes place. I think at that moment, Ralph Macchio's disbelief is taken care of at that point. I think he realizes, oh, okay, this is for real. Because his demeanor changes quite a bit in these next few scenes. He's very serious looking. He's not like, hey, I'm going to get up here and jam out and have a good time and everybody will love me because I'm a blues man now. Quite the contrary. He's got a very locked face through all of this. He's like, he's not messing around anymore at this point. So
yeah, and then you have Jack Butler up there shredding, and yeah, Satan's PA's girl up there dancing with them. So after they're done jamming, they see them coming in, and it's almost like a funeral procession. You know, it's very dour and all this stuff. It's like you're in a gospel church and somebody had died. And then they get in there and they start their duel. Scotty, you
well,
want
here's my question for you. Is everything that's going on in this scene, is this supposed to actually be taking place in hell? And the reason I ask that is because everybody in the audience is dressed in black.
Yeah.
There's that, and that in the original screenplay, it was actually supposed to be at an abandoned train depot without people, just mano y mano. So that was added also deliberately by a director for a reason to add to your thing. Maybe that was it. You know, sort of like when you analyze the end of Sopranos, you can analyze the scene.
Yeah.
And that's actually, I actually kind of like that idea of it being that, because it was added again for purpose. So
yeah, I like it too. It adds a level of gravity to it and mood and atmosphere.
So and we are treated like Steve Vai jamming out. And talk about that, Scott. Tell us about Steve Vai's performance here because it's stellar.
Yeah, because, and I'll tell you why, Steve Vai was the only guy that they should have had in this role. It was going to be Keith Richards. I know Jimmy Page wanted to do it. He told the director directly he wanted to do it. They also thought about Stevie Ray Vaughan. The thing is, those are all blues guys. The only blues guy they considered that wasn't, actually the only guitarist that wasn't a blues guy was Zappa. And I don't know if I would have liked to see Frank Zappa up there jamming at the end of the movie.
Yeah.
Right? The reason it should have been Steve Vai, in my opinion, is because the beginning of the movie, the kid's playing Mozart and yada, 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 right? He's doing this classical. Steve Vai's doing his blues thing, and he's being Steve Vai, and he's using the whammy bar, and he's doing a little bit of extra, right? He's not just doing the blues. He's shredding. When they get down to it and they start trading licks, Steve Vai starts shredding a little bit. He starts going a little bit outside of the blues and being more 80s metal guitar player, a little bit flashy, let's say, which is cool because then Macchio's like, okay, I'm going to pull out this classical stuff at the end and throw it back. If it wasn't for Steve Vai's shredding, then Macchio would have been cheating. Like you had whoever guitar player they would have had would have been doing straight blues, and then Macchio's going to pull out Paganini at the end. Like that doesn't make any sense unless you had Steve Vai in that role, and then he had attempted to do that as well because he's also a shredder. Does it make sense where I'm going with this?
It does make sense. It makes perfect sense. But here's the other thing too, and I agree with you. Steve Vai was perfect for this role because if it had been Jimmy Page or it had been Frank Zappa or it had been anybody else, the audience musicians would have known who the hell it was. Steve Vai was an unknown quantity at this point. This was like before Joe Satriani and Surfing with the Alien became a thing. And then all of a sudden, instrumental guitarists could go mainstream. So Steve Vai was one of the early ones, but Joe Satriani was the one that opened the door for everybody. Up until then, Steve Vai was what, a studio musician?
He played with Zappa around that time. That's about the time he went from Zappa, and then he was at 86. He was with Roth, right?
Yeah, he's the Roth albums. Yeah.
And then 87 is when he went.
Smile came out.
Right, and then after
really close, maybe a year before.
Yeah, and then about the year after or two is when he went to Whitesnake, so he hadn't quite blown up with that yet. Yeah. But and another cool thing they do in the classical, talk about attention to detail. So the ending thing that he does is Paganini, right? Paganini did 24 Caprices. That one he did as part of the fifth Caprice, Paganini's fifth Caprice. The reason he played Mozart earlier in the movie. They could have picked any number of classical guys, right, for him to play at the end. Plenty of classical things you can shred.
Sure.
Paganini, the myth with him is Paganini sold his soul to the devil to become big centuries ago. Very deliberately picked that musical piece. Like
that's kind of great, actually.
Yeah.
That's a wonder. See, and here's the other thing too, and this is something I wanted to point out. was it's revealed that Robert Johnson sold his soul to the devil, and that's how he attained his immortality. And that Willie Brown wanted to make the same deal that Robert Johnson did. That's actually how he states it at the beginning. So Eugene turns out to be the only blues man who didn't sell his soul, but actually wound up saving a soul.
Right.
At the end of all of this.
Exactly.
Once it's all said and done, we have the big duel, and then at the end of it, they're going to head up to Chicago, I believe is
Right.
what they're saying.
Yep.
And like you had mentioned, Chicago was another big blues town.
Sweet home
And
Chicago.
that's reference to the Chicago tracks that you were talking about, the Robert Johnson track, and that's where we end it all.
Yeah.
Which is a better ending because, again, the original screenplay, they get on a bus to travel up there, and Willie Brown dies, and he dies at the end of the movie. So they had a choice to go with the sad ending or the happy ending, and I think they actually ran it by like some sort of maybe test audience. I don't know if they actually filmed it, but ran the idea by, and they decided to go with the happy ending. Yeah, definitely. I like the idea of heading to Chicago and carrying on from there.
Yeah. I like the happy ending in this one too. Yeah.
You know what else I like about this movie, sort of random, is I was watching this again for the first time in years. I feel like this is one of the few movies that could have been made today and gotten over well. The total journey between two characters, the sort of almost coming of age partially. Like, this movie could have been done today. And there's not a lot of movies from the 80s you can say that about.
You know, and you're right. They could have done it today. God, I hope they don't like get any ideas of, hey, let's do a remake of Crossroads.
Yeah.
There's a timelessness about this movie because it deals with a musical genre that was already well out of vogue at the time they made this movie. I mean, this was kind of a risk for Ralph Macchio because he was, like big right off of the whole Karate Kid thing. Shit, he did Karate Kid movies after this one. I understand why they wanted Ralph Macchio in the role because he does inhabit the role perfectly.
Yeah.
But I don't understand why Ralph Macchio wanted the role.
Like I said, he passed on Back to the Future. I mean, he's got to be kicking himself, right? Even if he would never publicly say that. You have to.
I guess, but Eric Stoltz is kicking himself harder.
Before Macchio, they were going to. They had Sean Penn was going to play the role, and they looked at Tom Cruise as well. They looked at both of them before Macchio was the final one.
I could kind of see Sean Penn in this role. Ralph Macchio comes off as like a very clean-cut kind of kid, whereas Sean Penn, like I remember Sean Penn in Bad Boys way back in the day, not Bad Boys with Will Smith and Martin Lawrence. So I don't know that Sean Penn would have been right for the role because he doesn't come off as naive or clean enough.
Or Tom Cruise, because Tom Cruise and his stupid smile and sunglasses just wouldn't have fit either. I think Tom Cruise is a little too happy for that at that time. You got Risky Business and all. I mean, too pretty boy.
Well, I was gonna say, like, for Tom Cruise, Risky Business, this would have been like a repeat of that because he's the clean-cut suburban kid who's like getting down and gritty with the criminal element in Risky Business. Well, in this one, it would have been the clean-cut suburban kid getting down and dirty with the blues scene.
Yeah.
So I get why they would consider him, but at the same time, it's like I can understand why Tom Cruise would be like, yeah, I did that role already. I'm good. I'm moving on to something else. So
no, I think it's good casting. Because it'd be hard for me to picture anybody else doing this role. I'm not saying anybody else couldn't do the role. I'm just saying it'd be hard for me to see the
deal.
Yeah, I was going to say, Scott, are there any movies that you would recommend if people enjoyed this?
Actually, number one first. Would you recommend this movie?
You know what? I'm not sure this movie's for everyone, though. I would recommend this movie for someone 20 and over. My kid's not going to watch this movie, a 14-year-old. Not everyone's, especially now. I mean, the blues is uncool again. It goes through phases.
Then too,
Yeah, it goes through phases. I recommend the movie personal taste, but being realistic, I'm not sure exactly who it's for, which might explain the domestic, 16 million or whatever it was. It's a good movie. I think if people are open
in movies,
come into an open mind. Forget about the blues. You don't have to like the blues to like the movie. I mean, it's a good movie. So if you go into it open and take the style of music out of it, I don't care what you like, then yeah, I do recommend it.
All right.
So what movies would you recommend then? Also, that kind of the same vein.
Again, that Runaways one, I think, similar in tone. It's serious. It doesn't take itself too serious at the same time. So I would throw that. I mean, it's a little more recent. I think it's a little more palatable for people. Runaways is also sort of a timeless span in some respects. That music. Gosh, what else would there be? I would not say The Dirt. Do not let your children near that movie. About equally. I'm not sure. There's not a whole lot of great music movies that I can think of off the top of my head. If there are, they're older. I can't think of anything more recent.
Yeah, like here recently. It seems like every music biopic, there's like, here's the template, and we got to plug in the artist, and then like them coming together and their big hit, and then their big personal drama that threatens their career, and then their ultimate triumph over evil to come back and make a big stand, and why they earn their place at the
Everything
Rock and
after
Roll
Ray is the
Pantheon.
same fucking thing. Like Ray's the template.
I would throw in Walk the Line is decent too in that respect. They keep it pretty real, for lack of a better term. Walk the Line's pretty decent, but I think everyone's already seen. I mean, that's not like some underground movie that someone's going to discover for the first time.
Right.
I mean, I don't know. What's the one that it's not based on a real character that I know of, but what was the Jeff Bridges one that he did where he was the country guy? You know what I'm talking about? That's a good one too.
Oh, the one with Gyllenhaal, Maggie Gyllenhaal.
Yes.
I know what movie you're talking about. I can't think of the time. I have
Miles something.
Again, that's a good music movie.
I've got Gwyneth Paltrow's "Country Strong" stuck in my head, and I know that's not it.
What was that movie that she was in? That horrible song she did with Huey Lewis. It's the cover. Oh, it's so bad.
Anyways, get back to the movie you're talking about, Scott. Is Crazy Heart.
Yes.
Okay.
Good movie. There you go.
Yeah. And I forgot that shitty movie with Gwyneth Paltrow and what's her.
Country Strong is the name of it. Yeah. No. Okie Finoki. No.
Fuck that movie.
Oh, hey, I got one. Fabulous Baker Boys.
So
that's jazz.
I've seen that.
Oh, that's a decent movie. Michelle Pfeiffer, Bo Bridges, Jeff Bridges.
Oh shit! Okay, I know exactly what movie you're
talking about. Go back
and
watch that same time frame too, late '80s.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a couple of jazz musicians that are sort of past their prime. Michelle Pfeiffer's a singer, kind of brings them back a little bit, get more gigs, drama ensues, so forth, so on. Yeah, there you go. Go with that one. That's what I would recommend. Same time era too. So
okay.
Cool.
All right.
Thanks for being on the show.
Yeah.
Thank you. This is fun.
That's not how we depart here.
It's your show. It's how I depart. What do you depart?
Well, we're not signing off just yet. We're letting Scott go. So
All right, fine. Scott, thanks for being on the show. I hope we can have you back soon, and we will talk to you next time.
Take care, y'all.
See you, Scott.
See you.
So anyway, so you don't think that this movie had? Because I'm not going to say that this movie was a blockbuster by any stretch of the imagination, but I do remember like when it landed on cable, like all of a sudden everybody had seen it, and that's kind of like where it got its chops. It was the secondary market. It was not in its initial thing. And you know, the other thing about this movie is, like I said, Walter Hill was a known quantity. This was obviously a passion project for him. Walter Hill, I don't think he ever made a movie he didn't really want to make.
Yeah.
That's just the vibe that I get about him, because you don't make a movie like The Warriors and then make a movie like 48 Hours and not be like 100% on board. Did he do Young Guns? Was he involved in Young Guns?
Oh, let me see.
Or was that the screenwriter? Yeah, Crossroads. Yeah, it was John Fusco. John Fusco, who did the screenplay for this. He wrote Young Guns and Young Guns 2.
Oh.
And then he did Thunderheart. Then he did The Babe, which was the biography about Babe Ruth.
Mm-hmm.
He did Loch Ness, which that's fucking out of nowhere. And then he did Spirit, Stallion of the Cimarron, and I remember that was kind of a big animated flick at the time. There was Happy Meal toys and the whole 9 yards. John Fusco apparently has a thing for cowboys, blues, and martial arts. So that's history. But
well, he's mostly successful for the most part. I mean,
yeah,
most of his films are
Thunderheart's a
good
great
films.
movie.
Yeah. I don't know. What's your final thoughts on the movie itself?
I love this movie. And not a little bit. I saw this movie like multiple times back when it was on cable. I hadn't seen this movie in probably 10 years. I forgot how much I genuinely enjoy this film. And the reason I enjoy this film is that, yeah, obviously the blues are a big part of it, and I'm a music fan, but I'm no blues expert by any stretch. But I will say that from the character arc standpoints, first off, for an authenticity standpoint, which that's a big thing for me, they nailed it. I mean, I buy everything about everything that's going on. But the other thing is that there are multiple films in the 80s where like some young teenager befriends some old man, and it never felt earned. Like most old people find teenagers fucking annoying, and but like when you watch a lot of these movies where it's an older person and they're befriended, a younger, it's always like, oh well, yeah, let me tell you about the good old days and back in my day. This movie, he didn't want anything to do with Ralph Macchio, and it wasn't until he saw something in it for him that he like actually even started having anything to do with Ralph Macchio. So I love the fact that this started off as Willie Brown was more or less taking advantage of a young dumb kid, and then it grew into a friendship, and he didn't agree to teach him anything. He just agreed to show him Robert Johnson's lost song. So I love that everything in this movie feels earned, and I also love that when he reveals that there is no lost song, it's not like, haha, I got you. He feels bad about the fact that he took advantage of Eugene. So the payoffs on this film just keep coming and coming. And other than my comments earlier, where Jamie Gertz's character Francis is really not utilized as well as it could have been. That's this isn't a movie about Francis, so I can forgive that. Francis is there to demonstrate that, you know what, Eugene is 17, Francis is 17. They have very different lives, and she is there to demonstrate just how privileged Eugene's life really has been, whether he realizes it or not. And
I wouldn't say he's privileged. Yes, he goes to jail and stuff, but I would say it more as how green he is and how inexperienced in the world he is, how sheltered he is from the outside
sheltered,
world.
yes, but absolutely privileged. He lives in Manhattan. He is going to Juilliard. He is, wearing, dress jackets, and he is most definitely a privileged.
Well, I get that, but that's not.
Well, Jamie Gertz is very obviously, like Francis's character is very obviously poor white trash.
What I'm trying to say is you could be privileged and still be gritty and
no.
And not green and things like that. So it's not the fact that he's privileged, it's the fact that he's so naive and knows nothing other than what he's read in the books and shit like that. Which is what Willie Brown's trying to say to him. It's like, what I have to teach you, you know everything. You read all this shit already. What do you need me for?
What about you?
Yeah. Well, I absolutely recommend this film. It's a fun movie. Well, not fun in a haha comedic way, but it does have its comedic moments in it. I love music anyway, so this film's like right up my alley. Like Ralph Macchio's performance in this, John Seneca's performance. I actually didn't mind Jamie Gertz in this. But you could easily plug in anybody else in this film and probably would have done a little bit better justice, but that's fine. And really, I think the Satan's personal PA, I love his character.
Yeah.
It was really good, and I kind of wish he had just a little bit more in this. Not much, but just a little bit more, because he's a very, very interesting character in the way he's presented and shown, and that performance is fucking awesome.
For as small a role as that was, man, he he was so dialed in on that
Oh
character.
yeah, he was.
He so nailed it.
Yeah.
And it was you're absolutely right. He is a fascinating character, and he's like a tertiary character at best. And then Scratch Legba, he's another one. He's maybe on screen for 3 minutes.
Yeah.
But his performance is absolutely captivating in this. I bought it. At no point did I was like, "What? This is the devil?" I thought, "No, this is the devil." Yeah, that's exactly how he would roll. All the small roles in this, the sheriff, the bar owner, the skeevy hotel owner guy, every one of them is really solid, and they're all completely viable characters. But weirdly, they all feel like they have some dimensionality to them. They don't come off as one note.
Yeah, and the other thing too is the Satan's PA's PA, the black girl, who's in the car with them. And she was in there for even less time, but the time that she was in there was actually impactful too.
Oh yeah,
her making her smart ass comments, and then when they're doing the dueling scene, her dancing was like fucking just spot on, perfect, just beautiful to watch, and just so entertaining, so entertaining.
I was gonna say like when she's like literally she doesn't have a lot of dialogue. Literally the majority of her character is she's laughing at Willie Brown.
Oh yeah.
And she's laughing at Ralph Macchio. It's not just what she's saying. Like her whole attitude comes across perfectly, and so she's absolutely great.
Right. And then Steve Vai's performance. I mean, he was a perfect choice for that because he hams it the fuck up.
Oh,
I mean, so cocky, like this dude don't fucking have a fucking chance. I'm gonna fucking shred this dude down to the fucking ground, and then piss on the fucking ashes and shit like that when he's done. And his showmanship is just great. I can't think of anybody else who would have done it better. And the fact that Steve Vai was kind of an unknown then really helps a lot, like you said earlier. I think, like you said, if you had a famous guy in there, it wouldn't have been near as impactful.
If it had been if it had been Jimmy Page, I would not have bought it.
Yeah.
The fact that he was supposed to be an up and comer, and it mirrors Willie Brown, and it mirrors Robert Johnson, and that these are people that they made huge waves in blues, but outside of that, no one knows who the hell they are.
Yeah.
That's Steve Vai. That's perfectly Steve Vai. If you are not really into your music, if you don't know like the bassist and the drummer, you don't know who the hell Steve Vai was, and that's fine. But Steve Vai, it's not just like when he is in Ralph Macchio's face and just shredding away at him like you suck and you're gonna lose, haha. When he loses, it is perfect. It is that fuck you. It is. You can beat that one out if you need to, but like literally, he just doesn't say a word, just drops the guitar, walks off. Anybody else would have had to have said something. Steve Vai didn't. His guitar did all the talking that needed to be done. Other than this, movies you'd recommend?
I'm not gonna recommend a damn thing, and because number one, we mentioned like countless movies at the beginning and through the course of this, so I'm not gonna recommend anything. I want to know what you guys have seen, what you like movies like this. Give us some feedback. What would you think of this film? What do you recommend for us, or what would you really enjoy? So I'm gonna leave it at that.
Comments below, recommendations below, movies that we haven't seen. Drop it down there.
Yeah, talk to us. And here we are again at the end. I don't know what the fuck we're doing.
So Mike, what are we watching next?
So next we're watching 2006's Running Scared with Paul Walker and Vera Farmiga.
Sweet.
I think it's a film that most people don't know about at all. I stumbled upon it by accident. I think this was a Windy City rental. As a matter of fact, that's how I discovered this one.
We showed this at Grashenberg.
Did you? How did I
Yeah,
miss that one?
the boys had never seen this movie before, and they were like, "That was really great." And I was like, "Yeah, Paul
Yeah.
Walker." Because a conversation had come up about Paul Walker and like, was he a decent actor or was he just like coasting on the Fast and the Furious? And it's like, no, Paul Walker had some chops. He just didn't get to use them because he was in property films. So I am wholeheartily looking forward to this.
It's a dark film. There's fucking twists and turns all over the place. Heavy crime drama with some jacked up shit that goes on in this movie.
Yeah.
It's good. You guys are gonna like it.
All right. So we will catch you next time. In the meantime, leave us a comment below, and we'll see you on the next episode.
All right.
Up until like the last year and a half, and that was when he'd been put on a bunch of different medications. So it's not that Elvis was fat or had gotten lazy, it's that Elvis was on medication that basically made him retain water and bloat up. And then when he went off that medication, that's when he lost all the weight. So like right before he died, like a month before he died was when that vacation ended, or that ended. And he was much svelter, much thinner looking, and then he died.
So therefore, Vince Neil of Motley Crue is also on prescription medicine because every tour that guy's a fat bastard, and then by the end of it, he's a little better.
No.
Every year.
Vince Neil is full of Buffalo Wild Wings.
God bless him for it too.